Hey there, welcome back to the Fanboy Cantina. Thanks for joining. In this video, we are talking live about Zack Snyder's Justice League. And as always, we're joined by Mr. C. Mr. C, how are you doing today?
Happy to be back in the cantina and happy to have an opportunity to discuss this atypical motion picture.
No, let's go. Let's roll right in. So, first off, what did you think of the original Justice League?
Well, I didn't rewatch it as a prep for this conversation, but I can say that it was the same. I took it as a middle of the road. It was clearly not the worst motion picture I have ever seen. It was clearly not the best motion picture I have ever seen. I'd rate it as a decent, flawed picture. Just my experience sitting there looking at it on the screen. If I'm going to include my knowledge of things from outside of the movie house, of the theater going experience, then certain factors, maybe we'll go into some degree of detail, maybe we won't, would lessen my overall enjoyment of the film. What's your take on the previous iteration and release of a Warner Brothers 2017 Justice League motion picture?
So I didn't hate it. I did not hate the original Justice League. I didn't love it. I do think it's a very flawed movie. I think it was trying to do too much, and a lot of it did not work for me. And certain parts I think still don't work for me, or it's more glaring for what I don't like actually in the Zack Snyder version. But I didn't hate the original. I know some people have a very visceral reaction to it, but I didn't hate it. So let's yes, I love the background, Mr. C.
Hey, the weather is warmer, not the warmer is weather. Let's get the right order of the things. So
yes.
Yeah, so here I am back in the garage studio for the shoot. Awesome. I do like to be out here.
All right. So, what are your overall impressions of Zack Snyder's Justice League?
That is the exact right question for something that's billed as a review of the movie. And so my answer is I was pleasantly surprised. I had trepidation, I had reservation, I had hesitation going in based on all the history and all the complications and based on the whole concept, released the Snyder Cut. So just as I'm viewing it from HBOMax, from the comfort of my own home, just very early on, I said, wow, the cinematography, the scope, the story being told was in line with, to my experience, mythology. It struck more similar chord to me to Lord of the Rings. So it's, if we're plotting it along a line, if we have Avengers or Marvel productions on one side, and if we had Lord of the Rings on the other side, then this to me plots significantly closer to Lord of the Rings or other mythical influenced tales and stories depicted in movies. What are your thoughts towards the opening moments as you're watching from the comfort of your own home?
Yeah, well, I mean, just on that, I think for a movie of this length, being 4 hours long, man, 4 hours, I appreciated being able to watch a premiere in my house, in my pajamas. Actually, I wasn't in my pajamas, but the option of it being in my pajamas to watch a film.
You could have been in some pajamas if you felt like being in some pajamas.
If I wanted to, right? So for a film of this length, I really loved that. There was a local raffle. I don't know if you had this out in your area, but there was a raffle through Prizeo, and I forget what the cause was, but the big prize was you would get to see the film in person a couple of days early in a theater. And I was thinking, outside of the pandemic, dude, I don't want to watch 4 hours of movie in a theater. I don't want to do that. It's just too much movie. But overall impressions, yeah, I loved it. I really enjoyed it, and I think it's up there in terms of quality of films in the superhero genre. I think it's really way up there. I think it was epic, tonally more in line with the rest of the DC films. I thought the additions where we got to see more of the Cyborg story really made a tremendous amount of difference. It really worked for me. I think that it's still too long. I think it's still way too stinking long, in that there are certain parts where they could have cut back the film. You know, Zack Snyder could have cut back on the whole, you know, Icelandic karaoke bit, or, you know, whatever was going on with that. You know, it was like, okay, so she's sniffing the sweater. Like, okay. So right then, which is early on in the film, I'm thinking, ooh, you know, I appreciate the using the long form, but I'm worried that it's going to be stretched out. And I felt like that was actually part of the problem, that some of the scenes were just way too stretched out. But to see the film in its true epic kind of storytelling, to see more of the backstory of Cyborg, to see a bigger villain, a more compelling villain, like Steppenwolf in the previous movie, just didn't work for me. It didn't look good. You could see his whole face. He was just a weak he was a weak villain. And so now we got to see more of what Steppenwolf is about, more of his motivations, and when we get to see the bigger big bad of Darkseid, that makes a tremendous amount of difference. So all of this together, I think, makes for a superior film. I really liked it.
Yeah, I'd say if we're going to measure character by character,
Yeah.
or use of villain, or by any measure, I find this Snyder Cut, the Zack Snyder Justice League motion picture, to be superior to what was previously released. Cyborg is the perfect place to start, because, and let's say, so there was, and you know, you and I don't have insider knowledge, but there's conversation at the studio, Warner Brothers studio, wanted a well, yes, 4 hours. I don't know that any other motion picture has made it to the 4 hour mark, but so the studio wanted certain time requirements and tone requirements, and it appears that those didn't play out to the best final product. But so let's say, so Cyborg, for example, this is a completely more flushed out, realized character, and I understand, as current things stand, the character won't be in the Flash movie through all those complicated circumstances. But I could stand to see some more of this character, whether it's HBOMax, similar to Netflix with the earlier Marvel street level heroes, the Daredevil and Luke Cage and the others. If it's similar to Disney Plus in concept, that here's something that was previously only cinema theatrical release that now has a legitimate means to be interpreted and given its just due through streaming service, then yeah, I could go for more Cyborg. I could go for more Flash. As far as we know, we're not likely to see Ben Affleck as Batman, or you know, we don't know if Superman's still going to be Superman. But just for my own personal taste, I could go for additional viewings or furthering the story for each of the 6 characters, and then let's go for the cameo slice that they had, the Martian Manhunter character. I mean, wow, that I didn't know that going in. You know, there was talk of the previous slogan of "Unite the Seven," which then wasn't a utilized slogan after whichever point in time. But let me see some kind of Martian Manhunter HBO Max show, I'm blah 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 blah. I'm just on board with more of this stuff. So I understand full well it was stated clearly that this was going to be a one and done, or they were going to finish this unfinished movie the way the director had envisioned it. If that's it, then I was able to see 4 hours of really good production, and if that's not it, then yeah, I'm very interested and invested in seeing these characters. Wonder Woman will continue on, Aquaman will continue on, the Flash will continue on. So there's still that, and I mean that's pretty good. That's pretty important. But as far as the tone, cinematography, the vision brought to life, yeah, I could definitely go to see more of the other Justice League characters, including the Martian Manhunter.
Yeah, it's really a shame. At the end of the film, it's setting up for a next chapter. It's actually setting up for several chapters. Zack Snyder's vision was to have a Justice League 2 and 3, and I think 2 would have given us Darkseid, and 3 would have gotten us that nightmare thing that happens at the tail end. Oh man, I should have put this up a while ago. So if you are somehow just tuning in, hopefully we haven't jacked up the movie for you, but yeah, we're all spoiler all the time here. I think it's a real shame that we may not be seeing the continuation of these characters, at least or this combination of characters, and certainly for the Cyborg story. He does have a complete arc in this one, but I was really interested, a more complete arc, but I was really interested in the character. And as you and I kind of talked about via text, what I found striking in the Whedon cut, in the original version, or however we should call that version, you could see the Whedon kind of tropes of using humor and the offbeat jokiness between the characters, because that was what he did in kind of the Avengers and other things that he's done on TV, and that was okay. But what I did not like in the original Justice League is I could watch that film and you could tell where was Whedon's influence versus what was Snyder's original idea. I mean, it was jarring in tone difference. So, I think with this cut now, I would have liked to have seen, I would like to see more of the story. I would like to see the Darkseid thing. I would like to see the payoff. I would like to see a DC multiverse, which may be what ultimately happens. But it's kind of sad. It's kind of sad to me.
Even the voice selection for Darkseid, to me, sounded really good. The visual rendering of whatever the phone or whatever that communication device was that allowed Desaad and then Darkseid to communicate with Steppenwolf. I mean, to me, those are just great visual and great audio. Here's an ominous character that you have some idea of what's going on, but hasn't fully presented themselves. I mean, the comparisons to other movie villains are legit and interesting. I mean, maybe most directly the comparison can be made to Thanos, but there's definitely elements of Darth Vader or the Emperor or any other line of big bads or top villains, and yeah. So given all of that, would I like to see Darkseid in some kind of continued story as the story that began in this 4-hour cut? And yes, absolutely. I'd like to see Darkseid and Desaad and the other. So it's a good question of what is to be coming in the New Gods film, which is going to be, completely separate storyline, not related to Snyderverse, but yeah, probably given that there's acceptance for the idea of multiverse or different possible interpretations of the characters from different creative teams, then I look forward to both the New Gods release whenever it comes up, and it would also be great to see some continued Snyder influence on Darkseid.
Yeah, yeah. I would love to. I was a fan of the Ben Affleck Batman, the Batfleck. I liked the Batfleck. And as he gets older, it starts to set up for the true Dark Knight kind of older superhero character, the Frank Miller Batman type of character, or for that matter, the Alex Ross Kingdom Come. He's maybe a little too young for that, yes, still, but the older Batman I think is an interesting take. What I didn't like now about this version as well as the previous version. So in the Zack Snyder version, the color palette is different. It's tonally different. The bank robbery scene is actually kind of scary in this one, as opposed to in the previous one, where it happens so quickly and they got kind of this upbeat music that plays in the background. It's just a comic book scene. It's a comic book setup scene. And then you throw it away and you move on to the next. Here it's much more scary. But what I don't think works as well, and I'm sorry to say, I think Ezra Miller doesn't work for me as Flash. I think it throws me off tonally. You need something that's perhaps to lighten things up. And I was looking at Wikipedia earlier. The criticisms of the previous Superman and Batman v Superman movies there was no humor to it, right? They were just very dark. So Snyder needed to infuse more humor into this version of Justice League. But I think Ezra Miller, I want to like the character. I think he's fine separately, but in this film, I don't think he works for me. I don't think it works for me. I think it just kind of removes me out of it a bit.
I'll give. What am I going to do? Tell you your opinion's wrong? Of course.
Oh, what do you think?
I compared to the 2017 release, I thought he was similar to Cyborg, a more fully realized character, and then his moment of truth or his heroic moment or his facing his greatest challenge. So he's supposed to accelerate to a high velocity, faster than the speed of light, to then therefore give Cyborg enough kinetic energy transfer to be able to execute a function. He takes an injury along the way and he goes, "Oh, I just got the wind knocked out of me." So he was in that moment of truth.
That's true. Yeah.
That was his heroic moment, right? That was a definition of a textbook moment where a hero is supposed to face their challenge and find a way to persevere. And then again, having some piece, well, again, this is all fantasy and mythological and such, but having some piece of reality. He's taken an injury. He needs a minute to get the wind back to accelerate his healing or to take the sting out of the injury he took. So in that, I don't think he had that kind of moment in the 2017 release. So I appreciated his physical journey and internal journey in that moment along the way.
If he cuts himself in the physics of the DC movie, because Batman, Batfleck talks about the suit, right, that they use on the space shuttle and stuff. So if he's got an open wound, shouldn't his insides have been spewing all over the place back in time and stuff? Wouldn't it?
I suppose, but I'd rather not put that visual on the other side.
It's a family show. All right. Yeah. All right. I withdraw the comment. Yeah. Yeah. So I think Ezra Miller it's more striking for me that he doesn't work as much. But you're right, he does have that moment. He does rise to the occasion. So that is cool. And yes, he is more fleshed out than certainly in the previous movie. I do worry. I do wonder a little bit in that, since all of us have seen the original Justice League, and there has been the addition of the Aquaman movie, because that was after, I think it was 2018 or something. We've got 2 Wonder Woman movies under our belt now. So when you watch this movie, we've got more story for those characters than in that moment back in 2017. So I wonder a little bit on, how we may be distorting. If we were watching this movie without any of that context, how might we have reacted? We don't have to worry about that. We can just enjoy the movie as it is. But I wonder a little bit about that. And I wonder also about kind of the position that Whedon was in, where he needed, it's a tragedy in that Zack Snyder had worked on the film, had so much of it completed, but then he had a personal family tragedy that had happened, and that he needed to step away, and so then Whedon steps in. And I think I read that the original cut was 3.5 hours long. So there's no precedent at that time for a movie that's a superhero movie that's more than 3 hours, or 2.5, I think, for that matter. It's just unheard of. So I don't want to be a Whedon apologist at all, but I kind of understand what he had to do of truncating this thing. He didn't have to make it 2 hours. He could have added more time. He could have added the Cyborg story. He could have made other choices, like not have the Russian family arc in it, right? It was fine, but it's the Whedon, adding the human element into it. But I sort of understand what Whedon had to do of making it as short as he had to.
Well, so, okay, Whedon has a professional body of work, and in it you see his style present itself, throughout. So does Snyder. Snyder has his professional body of work, and you see his cultivated style present itself throughout. That's each of their separate resumes. That's each of their work histories. So on one hand, I mean, Whedon's going to Whedon, Snyder's going to Snyder. We should expect Whedon to provide and present his own way. Mm-hmm. And the same holds true for Snyder. So, I mean, clearly there were other circumstances that we don't know the details of what was the directive from the studio. There's been regime change within the upper echelons of Warner Brothers. So there's many complicated factors that we just know little pieces of information and not full stories. So, but considering all that, mm-hmm. Now this is kind of maybe an interesting juxtaposition to look at a movie that I'm describing out of the gate as like Lord of the Rings and very mythical in its scope. It was also this current Zack Snyder cut, the Snyder release. It was a little engine that could, this movie, as we saw it, it's 4 hours long. It's there had been regime change. The director had been taken off the project or left the project. Yet here we are, 17, 18, 19, 2020, 2021. Here we are watching a completed cut of it. There's hours and hours of speculation across YouTubes and blogs and face-to-face conversations about, did the Snyder Cut exist? Should it have been made? Does its release imply this? Does it not getting fully realized imply that? So in that sense, this 4-hour picture had no business actualizing itself, bringing itself to a fruition. Yet here it was, and it didn't feel like 4 hours. It was just enjoyable, and so that's a credit to the storytelling, the editing and the talents of the actors and all the other set design and costume design and lighting and everything. It was just, and okay, so yeah, I mean, I did watch it in increments, so that's another reason it didn't feel like a full 4 hours, but I could just as well watch it 4 hours consecutive and appreciate it. It did not drag. It didn't give me the experience that some other movies do, where like, all right, already, here's your epic battle scene. You're exhausting me with your epic battle scene. Let's get to the next scenery here. I had none of that with this movie. It was 4 hours of worthwhile entertainment.
Yeah, I watched it with my family in the living room, and we watched the whole movie end to end. We did take a break, I think, at chapter 2 or end of chapter 2 or end of chapter 3, and then got back into it. And it you're right, it works very well. The one part that I think there are a few parts that feel long. The battle in Themyscira,
Yes.
is that how you say it? That feels a little long. Like, okay, the thing fell down the cliff. Okay, I got it. You could shrink that part down. The many I've read this, the many slow motion scenes. Okay, all right, you could trim that down. The epilogue is way too long. Epilogue is way too long. I'm not sure what they could have done differently. I understand that was among the reshoot parts, that there weren't many reshoots, that the reshoots may have added only like 5 minutes of additional footage, to which I think that whole nightmare bit is one of them. That whole thing is way too long, and especially that sequence. It's just, what is this? Why is it so long at this point in the epilogue, right? We call it epilogue 2 or something. I don't know, but it feels a little bit too long to me. But yeah, but I think overall it's a fun ride, or it's a good ride. It does not feel particularly slow. It works generally well. And we had this question: do you think there will be more DC movies that have longer versions? Would this be a trend, or is it good timing during a pandemic?
That, I must say, is a well-placed question.
Yeah.
Aquaman's runtime was already our conversation about Aquaman before discussing things on the channel like this. It is a lot of movie in Aquaman. Aquaman could have conceivably been parceled out into separate, maybe there's a couple movies worth of movie in Aquaman as it was released. I can't recall the runtime on Wonder Woman 84. So I say there's already a trend to run long. So would this pull the releases to skew maybe even longer? Story craft wise, I would say at least it's possible, but then into the practicality of theater runtime, COVID recovery. I mean, I for sure don't know how to speculate on the COVID recovery theater practices. So I would just have a general speculation that it's possible that COVID recovery would lend towards shorter run times. What's your take on the question that we've just been given?
Yeah, no, I think, I do think there could be room for longer versions of films. And yeah, I think this would actually be a good thing. And I had read that there is actually a different cut of Suicide Squad, and it just they trimmed it down to the shorter version. That movie is not good at all to me. That is like a terrible film. It's just a terrible film. But I think, but I understand that there is a different cut of that. Similarly, I think there is a Joel Schumacher different cut of Batman and Robin, which is, further back, right? That's what's the name? Chris O'Donnell, right? Chris O'Donnell as Robin.
As Robin becoming Nightwing.
Yeah. So I understand that there is a different version of that film that may be out there, or at least there's footage. I would love to have those things come to light. I think it would be a great thing to see the these different cuts, particularly for films that have gotten kind of tarnished or slammed for just being what we got. I think there's room to see them. Yeah. Um, Martian Manhunter. So as you know, for my son, that's his favorite character, his favorite superhero. So that was a big deal in the house. Like, oh, it's Martian Manhunter, right? Um, but then he doesn't do anything. He shows up later, stops by, says, "Hey, Batman, how you doing?" Everybody seems to know who Bruce Wayne is. um, so that part, I don't know if it worked for me in that he just sort of shows up. So now we know he's there. And then it's literally the end of the world. And Martian Manhunter is nowhere to be found. Like, where the heck was he?
Right. So to make it work better, I think the scene would have needed to be longer, or to feel like I don't know if Batman would have naturally just been like, oh, you want to come be the seventh seat at the table, great, without doing any background check or detective work on a Martian detective character himself. So yeah, and I wasn't looking at that point in time for it to be any longer, but it was like as just a teaser or a taste. Like, is that more wishful thinking on the production's part that there would be some room to follow up and maybe the character of Martian Manhunter would get to be actualized somewhere? I'm pulling for that. I'm kind of hoping for that. Yeah. But it's so with the regime change and with the heading with Warner Brothers' choice between the different regimes to head in a different direction that was not follow up from Plan A or the plan earlier on at the time to have Zack Snyder continue to set things in motion for the DC film universe. He's a great character, and any other piece of him that could make its way to a production would be great.
I wasn't. I mean, you barely see him right in the film. He does seem rendered a little strangely, like not fully. I felt like not fully developed as a look. Like it was a little raw of the design of the Martian, the alien face. But yeah, I think there's room. I would have liked to. I'm talking about it in the past tense. I would have liked to have seen that. Maybe we'll still get to see that. I would have been interested in the whole Ryan Choi character, who. So I don't know anything about the Atom character at all. But to have those kinds of seeds planted and have it pay off as future additions to the Justice League, and so then Batman can go to IKEA and get more chairs for his table, his round table. I would have liked to have seen that, but I don't know. I'll be good if it ends here, but I would hope that Warner Brothers and the like think about additions, continuing it.
Yeah, and I was speculating just what data points or what would be the measure of success of this release on HBOMax that would then allow either future HBO or future theatrical release. And I have no real idea of how to, ticket sales at the theater is definitely one. I suppose DVD sales historically, not so much anymore, had been another, or VHS tape sales if we want to go farther back. But yeah, without knowing how quote unquote success or marketability success would be defined. So I guess we kind of just sit back and see. But again, it was a very slow burn to go from, there is no Snyder Cut to this completed and realized version. So it may be a while before all the votes are cast on this one.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is in that 4:3 format, which is meant for IMAX, and so now I'm gonna waffle. So I said earlier that I don't want to see a 4-hour movie. I don't want to be sitting around in a theater. But actually, for this film, yeah, now having seen it, it would be spectacular. It would be fantastic to see in the theater, with a crowd of other people on the other side of the pandemic. Obviously, to see it in a big theater, to see it on the big screen, with all of the boom of being live and in person in cinema. Yeah, it would be spectacular to see on a bigger screen. Yeah. So, we have another comment. When I watch your live stream, I can't help to think, but think to myself, Fanboy Jeep makes a great Asian Doctor Strange. I know that's Marvel, but I'm just throwing it out there. Yes. I forgot my cape.
Hey,
Yeah.
I mean, when something is true, it's easy to say it verbally or through typing in the chat. But I mean, we can follow up on that truth, on that truism. You're doing the
Fanboy C, I'm here to bargain. Yeah. 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 I'll just say that over and over again for the next hour.
bargains and incantations. That the future will be revealed.
As a work of art or as a production, something that I did notice and I thought was amazing with the Snyder version, when again, this is all spoiler all the time here, but at the end, when Wonder Woman does that move and cuts Steppenwolf's head off, and then the whole body and the head go through the portal. I love that moment. And then I thought it was equally impressive, that same gesture where Wonder Woman's got the sword overhead and then does that move and cuts them down, is the same footage from when in the original in the Whedon cut, where she goes up and Superman blows the cold air on the axe, and then she breaks the axe with her sword. So it's the same footage. It's just reused in a completely different green screen background. I thought I was impressed. I was particularly impressed, and maybe that was the original cut that Zack Snyder had, and then Whedon redid it into the version that we got. But I was really impressed by being able to see, it's the same thing, just used in a completely different way.
Yeah. So whether it's on the comic book page or film, the fight choreography, a well drawn, a well storyboarded, a well keyframed battle, it does a lot for my viewing experience and my my enjoyment, whether I'm looking with my own eyes or the eyes of Agamotto. But yeah, it was just such a great 1-2-3 combination to have Diana, and I think it was Aquaman and Superman then set that in motion. And then, no pity for Steppenwolf, because he is who he is and what he is. But it was just, boy, that just building the case of the hard case that Darkseid is. Well, I'll just step on his head, and then not even step on his head through the portal. I'll just step on his head because it was within reach of my foot. That's right there. That's a lot of in that quick couple seconds. That's a lot of character building for Darkseid.
Yeah, all of it. Even you're right. That's impressive by itself. You don't get a lot of Darkseid. You get a lot of Steppenwolf. A lot more Steppenwolf in a good way, where he feels like a more fleshed out and realized big bad. But with Darkseid, there's barely any screen time. But you understand him. You don't really understand what the anti-life equation means or what that's about. But you understand that, okay, there's yet another big bad out there. I dug it. And I really liked the removal of the whole arc of the henchmen of Steppenwolf. I was going to say Thanos. The henchmen of Steppenwolf are the defeated people from way back when, right? And they feed on fear, right? So then you had the complete arc of like fear. Okay, so fear is going to kill Steppenwolf. No, they chopped his head off, man. They chopped his head off.
It's pretty definitive.
Pretty definitive. What's up with the Justice League? We're gonna chuck your bad guy's head all the way through the portal.
Yeah. Best to boom back through the other side of that boom tube and stay back out there in Apocalypse and not be invading this Earth.
What do you think of that? What do you think that FaceTime hookup is called? What do you think they call that? Is it like rock time? Is it? I mean, it's kind of like. I'm having like visions of like Ghost with Demi Moore and Patrick Swayze, molding the thing, except instead it's a rock thing. I don't know if I'd actually want that in my house. It seems like it takes a lot of space.
Definitely takes a lot of space. And, maybe it's just the Apocalypse phone booth. Sure isn't a Metropolis phone booth because we know what comes out of a Metropolis phone booth is all good. And then with Seaman,
that kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I need to see Desaad changing his robes, but I mean, but there's by comparison, like I can remember Robin Williams, in Dead Poet Society, taking a comedic shot at a certain style of acting and such. So I'm very glad to see Desaad, for his very little amount of screen time, rendered this way as opposed to, say some kind of Shakespearean production that was maybe not so much on the action side of things.
Yeah. Well, I'm just looking at my handful of notes. Anything that we didn't cover that you'd like to add?
Well, out of a 4-hour movie, there's of course plenty that we didn't cover, but for this, yeah. So just keeping it very from the opening, it won me over, appealing to mythology and having Zeus and Ares involved. And again, there was epic battle. And sure, you could say the Amazonian versus Steppenwolf bit did run a bit long, but at no point did those epic battles exhaust me. Again, I was hesitant, cautious optimism going into viewing, and it exceeded my expectations to the point where I do hope that there would be something more. And if there isn't, if that's the end of the ride, then it was a 4-hour really, really good ride. And what are your closing comments that you have to offer whoever's watching us?
Yeah, no, same. I enjoyed the film. I did not feel like I needed to see a 4-hour version of Justice League. I was content, not happy, but content with the original version. But this version just gives so much more. It feels right. It feels like what the Justice League should be, of bringing together the Justice League, introducing these new characters. I've already said that my bit about Flash, but I really enjoyed that Cyborg is a fully fleshed out character. He ends up being the heart of the film, to me at least. That he's the uniter kind of the team. In the previous movie, it was all kind of jokes and ha ha ha. I was sitting on the lasso, and so I'm talking from Aquaman talking from my heart and stuff. It doesn't make sense, right? And so I was glad all that stuff was gone, and I was glad that they instead built it around Cyborg. And yeah, I was really glad the whole bit where Flash falls on Wonder Woman's chest. It was stupid stuff. So you get rid of that kind of thing. Yeah, and so the beats that Whedon took, I'm glad they were gone, and I'm really glad for this film. I do think there's quirky problems that get introduced, because I was wondering, is Wonder Woman's home land devastated? Is it gone? Right? Because it's not in Wonder Woman 84, right? I can't remember.
Right.
Actually,
So the events that happened in Wonder Woman 84 would have chronologically been many, many years ahead of what we just witnessed in this movie. So I'm going to say that's a bit of a mystery to be determined. Definitely Steppenwolf, unless it happened off screen, which I don't think it did or would have, was just doing some mind manipulation on Diana. So were there a significant loss of soldiers from of the Amazons? Yes, but I don't believe the entirety of the island was wiped out. And then maybe that's something that'll follow in Wonder Woman 3. You know, maybe Wonder Woman gets to go home again, and maybe we can see some follow up that way.
yeah, because she's on the wreckage of something with the Artemis arrow at the end. So, but it does make sense that Steppenwolf would have taken a break and go devastate a place and then come back. It doesn't really make sense. I know I'm off on a tangent. Another thing that was kind of weird for me: the Atlanteans can breathe. Like there's a whole thing in Aquaman where they've got the outfits and the water is in the outfits, right? And now here they're on land and they can talk. There's a whole thing about the royal blood bit. So maybe the
royal blood. So again, it's possible this is just a continuity mismatch that hadn't been, the royal blood and the breathing on land hadn't been established yet, or it could have been they were labored breathing. I hate to use fish out of water, but so let's say an Atlantean out of water, they were definitely having breathing difficulties, whether that was that they just took a physical licking, or was it more so, as you'd imagine, that within this mythology that an Atlantean would not be able to be a land breather. I was thinking that's what it was, that they were still maybe had some water that they were able to make use of, but they were definitely in a bad way.
Yeah, there's like these little bits that made me think, oh, and obviously those movies came after Justice League 2017. So, would there be a Teen Titans thing in the future because of Deathstroke? Well, that's interesting.
Would I like there to be? Absolutely. I know we do. So there's an incarnation of Titans as it stands now. I would imagine that as an actor, Joe Manganiello wasn't going to link up with that in the future or be connected to it. So, but again, if this, whatever the success metrics are or might be, lead to that same actor getting some more work or some more story as Deathstroke, then would it be also great if that was in conflict with the Teen Titans or Titans characters? I think absolutely. I would really like that to be the case. Will it be the case? I don't know, but if it is the case, I'll be checking it out for sure.
Yeah, that's a shame, right? I mean, they set up the character and he appears in the Nightmare bit, but there's potentially no payoff. I understand that there was talk of a standalone Deathstroke movie at one time, but I don't. I don't think that's happening, and then two, it's just a sort of a shame that maybe we won't get to see that character anymore. I was interested. Oh yeah, maybe with a live action, with a continuation of Teen Titans or something, they could get that girl in the bank robbery scene where Wonder Woman goes down and says, "You can be whoever you want." After Wonder Woman has just devastated everybody in that bank, thrown people into the wall, blew up this other guy with this thing, and all that's left is his hat. But that girl wants to be. I want to be just like you, Wonder Woman. Yeah, right on. She could be in the Teen Titans. I don't know what character that would be.
She could be Wonder Girl of the future. Well, that, or hey.
All right. Well, I think we've about covered it. If you are watching after the fact, please post in the comments. We'd love to chat with you. Overall, I think you and I will both say a much improved version of Justice League and a fun ride.
Absolutely that.
All right. Well, again, thanks for watching, everybody. And if you have not seen it yet, I'm sorry that we've totally spoiled the movie, but it is available on HBOMax, and it's definitely worth a watch and a rewatch. I am looking forward to watching it again. So thanks for watching, everybody. Please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. This has been the Fanboy Cantina. Take care.